If you found this video useful, the best way to support the channel and ensure you don't miss our next upload is to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Part 37.6 Surah As-Saffat. The arranged in ranks the verses to be covered in this script are 5, specifically verses 26 through 30. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, dear listeners, to Sufi Essence with Hammad Syed. We continue our intense and detailed study of Surah As-Saffat. The arranged in ranks, moving deeper into the devastating scene of final judgment and accountability. The preceding section, verses 21 to 25, concluded the initial phase of judgment with the chilling rhetorical question to the condemned assembly, exposing the absolute failure of their worldly alliances built on denial and shirk, associating partners with Allah. What is the matter with you, that you do not help one another? This next segment, comprising verses 26 through 30, provides the horrific and detailed answer to that devastating question. The condemned, now completely stripped of all power, status, and pride, turn upon each other instantly, their fragile earthly camaraderie dissolving into bitter recrimination, accusation, and blame. This sequence masterfully depicts the futility and spiritual danger of relying on false leaders or unrighteous peers. Instead of offering the expected help, the former companions engage in a frantic, desperate argument, each party attempting to shift the responsibility for their collective ruin and eternal fate onto the other. The verses establish a crucial principle of divine justice: that all the participants in the misguidance, the followers and the false leaders, are equally culpable, concluding with Allah's decisive statement that their denial was based on a deliberate, self-imposed blindness, an inherent transgression, rather than genuine confusion or involuntary error. Kanzul Iman, Quran, Surah As-Saffat, the arranged in ranks, chapter 37, verse 26. Nay, but today they are submitting. The 26th verse provides the immediate, overarching, and devastating answer to the question: what is the matter with you that you do not help one another? It exposes the catastrophic state of the condemned assembly. Nay, but today they are submitting. Bal humo aliyama mustaslimna. Linguistic roots and semantic expansion say the particle bal, nay, but are rather signals the sharp, irreversible contrast between their aggressive denial and defiance on earth and their absolute state in the hereafter. Niyamo, today referring to the day of judgment, Yamal faithful, emphasizes the dramatic, temporal shift where their entire will is broken and rendered irrelevant. Mustaslimna is the key, powerful term meaning they are submitting, they are surrendering, or they are wholly subjugated. This comes from the root salama, peace, submission, the root of Islam. But here it denotes forced and absolute submission, Istislām, compelled entirely by the overwhelming reality of the punishment, not by free will or faith. The verb form implies a complete and utter giving up, where even the thought of resistance is impossible. This forced submission is the immediate psychological consequence of realizing the truth they willfully blinded themselves to. Theological relevance. This verse is a concise summary of the day's authority and a powerful lesson in divine sovereignty. Their inability to help each other is a direct and logical consequence of their forced submission to an overwhelming authority they deliberately chose to mock and deny on earth. Their defiant refusal to submit to the truth Islam in this world is now tragically reversed into a humiliating, non-beneficial submission, Istislām, enforced by punishment. All their pride, power, and clever arguments have vanished, replaced by an utter and irreversible meekness, Ṭāghīn. This verse teaches that denial does not negate reality. It only determines the nature of one's ultimate painful encounter with it. Spiritual and contemporary application, this serves as a definitive statement on the futility and tragic conclusion of rebellion against the divine will. Earthly defiance is temporary and ultimately self-destructive. Divine sovereignty is eternal and absolute. The sincere believer is urged to choose voluntary, loving submission Islam now, when it earns eternal reward, rather than waiting for the day when submission is compulsory and earns only eternal torment and regret. The essence of this verse is choosing to actively embrace Islam over facing passive, humiliating Istislām. Kanzul Iman, Quran, Surah As-Saffat, the arranged in ranks, chapter 37, verse 27. And some of them turn to others, questioning each other, since they are stripped of all mutual help and forced into humiliated submission. their alliances collapse immediately. They turn on one another in desperation and despair, and some of them turn to others, questioning each other. Wa akbala bojem, I'll be in Yatasā'alūna. Linguistic roots and semantic expansions say, why akbala bojem el-bayin means some of them turn towards others, denoting a sudden, intense face-to-face confrontation. The former companions, Azwij, who shared a path of sin, verse 22, now become hostile accusers. Yatasā'alūna is the key reciprocal verb, meaning they question each other, they interrogate one another in a frantic manner, or they seek answers and blame from one another. The use of the reciprocal form highlights that this is a cyclical, agonizing exchange where no one offers comfort, only the desperate shifting of blame. This desperate exchange represents the failure of human beings to find peace or comfort outside of their Creator, leading them to a frantic search for an external source of blame for their catastrophe. The noise and chaos of this mutual accusation are part of the initial torment. Theological relevance. This verse shows the immediate, definitive breakdown of the social structure of disbelief, their mutual trust, support, and false sense of security, which sustained their denial on earth, vanish the instant the ultimate reality hits. Instead of finding comfort in their group, they find mutual accusation and condemnation. This scene confirms that companionship not rooted in sincere piety, Ṭāghīn, is volatile, illusory, and will inevitably betray its adherents on the day of judgment, underscoring the severe consequence of the bonds formed in disobedience to Allah. The false solidarity of sin finds its true conclusion in eternal conflict. Ethical and contemporary application. This is a vital moral warning about the nature of friendship and alliances. Companionship based merely on worldly gain, shared sin, defiance of moral law, or mutual denial of the truth will invariably result in bitter regret and mutual recrimination when true accountability arrives. The believer is commanded to select righteous companionship rooted in piety and truth. For those who loved Allah together will find solace together, while those who sin together will find only accusation. Kanzul Iman Quran, Surah As-Saffat, the arranged in ranks. Chapter 37, verse 28, they will say, indeed, you used to come to us from the right side. The dialogue begins with the followers, the weaker, its misled party initiating the blame, accusing their false leaders of deceptive and persuasive misguidance. They will say, indeed, you used to come to us from the right side, Klu inakam kantum, tatena and all, yamni. Linguistic roots and semantic expansion say, inakam kuntum ta tanana, indeed. You used to come to us establishes the continuous historical pattern of influence and leadership. Now yamni, from the right side, is a highly symbolic and profound phrase. Consensus of Tafsir offers crucial interpretations. From the position of power, trust the strong side, meaning that you approached us asserting authority, sincerity, and good advice, pretending to be trustworthy, spiritual, religious, or political guides. From the side of goodness logic, meaning you presented your misguidance attractively, packaged as wisdom, noble tradition, superior logic, or social virtue, thereby deceiving us and making the sin palatable. Satanic influence. This interpretation suggests the subtle, pervasive, and often imperceptible nature of the deception, mirroring Satan's promise to approach humanity from all sides except the straight path. The common thread is that the leaders approach them under a guise of legitimacy or moral authority, not as overt, repulsive, evil, making the deception profound. Theological relevance. The phrase highlights the subtle, deceptive nature of false leadership. Misguidance rarely appears as explicit wickedness. Rather, the agents of evil disguise falsehood as attractive truth, using arguments of tradition, social cohesion, or material gain to draw people away from the narrow path of divine obedience. The followers acknowledge that they were seduced by the appearance of rightness or strength, thereby confessing their negligence and accepting outward appearances over inner truth. Spiritual application. This is a severe lesson in spiritual vigilance and critical discernment. The believer must always test the source of guidance against the absolute standard of the Quran and Sunnah, exercising baskra, insight, and intellectual honesty. Submission must be to Allah alone, not to any human authority claiming infallibility or using manipulative charm, status, or tradition, yamkin, to subvert the established divine commands. Kanzul Iman, Quran, Surah As-Saffat, the arranged in ranks, chapter 37, verse 29. They will say, "Nay, but you were not believers." The leaders, the stronger party and accused, immediately and forcefully reject the followers, attempt to shift the blame, placing the ultimate responsibility back on the followers' inherent deficiency in faith. They will say, "Nay, but you were not believers." Clue, Bao, Lam, Ṭāghīn, Mu'minun. Linguistic roots and semantic expansion say the particle Bao nay, but is a strong repudiation, instantly rejecting the follower's claim of being innocently led or misled by irresistible force. Lam Ṭāghīn Mu'minun, you were not believers or you were lacking in genuine faith, is the powerful, definitive accusation. The leaders argue that if the followers had possessed sincere, resilient faith, eman, they would have rejected the false guidance immediately and definitively, regardless of how attractive or powerful the deception was. The lack of eman was the essential, enabling precondition for being misled. Theological relevance and shared agency. This exchange establishes the principle of shared responsibility and individual agency. While the leaders admittedly misled and deceived, the followers possessed the free agency ikhtiyar to reject the misguidance. Having been exposed to the undeniable evidence of the prophets and the signs of the Creator, the leaders correctly assert that the followers' inner predisposition towards denial and lack of fundamental faith made them inherently susceptible to the deception. True eman acts as an inviolable spiritual shield against all forms of subtle misguidance, which they clearly lacked, making their eternal fate justly earned. Ethical and contemporary application. This is a crucial lesson in personal accountability. No one can fully blame external forces for the ultimate failure to believe and to act righteously. While external pressure and false persuasion exist, the human being is ultimately responsible for the disposition of his or her own heart. The firmness of one's faith is the deciding factor in resisting manipulation. This verse reminds us that true faith is not passive. It is an active force of resistance against falsehood, rooted in conviction and knowledge. Kanzul Iman, Quran, Surah As-Saffat, the arranged in ranks, chapter 37, verse 30. And we had no authority over you. Nay, but you were an aggressive people. The leaders solidify their denial of ultimate blame, definitively stating the limits of their earthly power and identifying the followers' intrinsic character flaw as the actual independent cause of their ruin, and we had no authority over you. Nay, but you were an aggressive people. Wa, ma, kana, lan alaikum, min sol, neen bao kantam, common, gaman, ga, common, ga. Linguistic roots and semantic expansions say, Wa ma kana lan alakum, min sol neen, and we had no authority over you, is the pivotal defense. Sulṭān here means proof, authority, compelling evidence, or coercive power based on a divine mandate. The leaders deny they had the power of proof, divine authority, or the power of coercion to force disbelief. Their influence was merely persuasive, which the followers accepted voluntarily based on their own defective judgment. Balkantum, common, gachin, nay, but you were an aggressive, transgressing people places the ultimate moral fault on the followers. Gachin denotes those who transgress all bounds, who are rebellious, excessive, and intrinsically prone to error and self-will gin. Theological relevance and the nature of Sulṭān. The argument here is a subtle yet profound defense of human agency. The leaders claim that their influence was voluntary. The followers followed because of their own pre-existing rebellious nature, ugan, and refusal to accept moral limits. This concept aligns with the Sharia principle that no human can compel another to violate the truth unless they submit willingly to the coercion. Thus, both the deceiver and the willingly deceived are held responsible for the choice to reject the truth. Spiritual and contemporary application. This confirms that the most successful misguidance finds fertile ground in pre-existing spiritual weakness and pride. The ugly transgression of the followers, their arrogance, lack of humility, an innate desire to defy the divine order made them easy targets for the leader's false message. This is a severe warning against allowing our base desires and excessive pride to dictate our faith, as they are the primary gateway for misguidance and the true source of our eternal condemnation. Hadith. The failure of false companionship, the bitter mutual recrimination, and the collapse of support verses 27 to 30 are profoundly reflected in the Prophet's teachings concerning the ultimate futility of relying on false alliances that do not adhere to truth. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "A man is upon the religion of his friend. So let one of you look at whom he befriends." Sunan Abu Dawud, Hadith number 4833, Book 43, Adab Manners. Hadith contextualization and analysis. This hadith provides the earthly context for the terrible accusations witnessed on the Day of Judgment. The religion of his friend. The hadith warns that one's companions have a direct, profound impact on one's belief system, deen, and moral character. The deniers were companions azwij, verse 22, in their denial, and thus influenced each other to follow the path of kuffar. The consequence, because they were united in error again, they are justly gathered together. On the day of separation, the very friends who guided them astray in aliyam shin will be their bitterest accusers. The hadith underscores the believer's grave responsibility to select righteous, sincere companionship rooted in piety, Ṭāghīn, ensuring that their mutual questioning on the Day of Judgment will be one of comfort and support, not bitter blame and mutual recrimination, which is the agonizing fate of the aggressive people. We conclude Part 37.6. Having witnessed the terrifying collapse of denial into forced submission and the disintegration of unrighteous companionship into mutual accusation, may Allah grant us the sincere faith to withstand all forms of deceptive leadership, and the humility to never be counted among the aggressive people Gahan. May our guidance be solely based on His clear proof Sulṭān, and may our friendships be rooted in piety and mutual support in truth, so that we never stand on that day engaging in bitter questioning of one another. O Allah, the Judge of all creation, protect us from the deceptive allure of those who approach us from the right side with false guidance and the persuasive power of evil. Grant us strong and resolute faith, so that we are never among those who are justly accused of being not believers or a transgressing people. We seek refuge in your authority sole, and alone, sure that our companionship leads only to your pleasure. And save us from the shame of forced submission and bitter mutual questioning on the day when all ties are severed. Ameen.